Okay, good evening everyone. Thanks very much for coming. So I'm going to talk about selling the digital agency which I founded and merging that into the buyer. So first of all, a little bit about me. So I have a degree in oceanography with marine biology, which is very, very useful for running a digital agency. The next thing I did was I worked for a .com boom agency in 2000 to 2002, got experience of agencies. And then I moved to Brighton and I founded a digital agency called Cubeworks, based in the centre of Brighton. So after growing that business for several years, I sold Cubeworks to MBA, who I'm now working for, in June last year. And I am in the middle of an earn-out, so I'll talk more about that. I can answer questions about that later. So I'm essentially tied into MBA until at least January 2016. In a moment of madness, I've also founded another business called SponsorWorks, which is a cloud software platform for sponsorship management. So that is my new project. So I'm not disappearing to a yacht in the Bahamas, sadly. So things I'll cover tonight then. So talk about what is your strategy for your business as a starting point for thinking about what you do in the future. Planning for a sale and how you go about that. The sales process itself, merging the business once it's been sold, and also a few top tips for the whole process. So I'm going to do all that in 15 minutes, so I'm going to go pretty fast. So the first thing is, what's your strategy? So there's a great quote, it's almost like the military. Before you go in, you want to know how you're going to get out. I thought when reading that, the military could actually learn something from that. Maybe they could think about what they're going to do before they go in. So that was by Ted Thomas, who runs an exit consultancy based in Chicago. So I think it's really important to think up front what your strategy is going to be. So in terms of the routes you can possibly take, trade sale, which is the route I went down, I'm going to be talking about more. Succession plan, family business, management buyout, that's a potential route. Do you want to just be a lifestyle business? Do you even want to sell it at all? Are you happy just running your business for a long time, paying your wage? Could be a perfectly valid route. Transition, which is sort of hybrid, which is, is your company doing one thing, do you want to transition it to something? And then IPO, I'll let Jonathan talk a little bit more about that. So I'm really going to focus on the sort of trade sale route, but I think it's really important just think about what you actually want out of your business at the end of it. Planning for sale. An advisor once said to me, you only sell your business once. Bit of a sort of pithy little comment, but I think the point is you need to really, you're only going to get one chance at this. You could turn down some offers, but really when you start going through the motions of actually selling it, you need to have prepared really a long time in advance for that. So I'll just talk about the process of sort of planning. So questions to ask yourself. So who might actually buy your business? Start thinking about what sort of companies, particularly if it's a trade sale, you might be attractive to. Then you can start positioning yourself for what they might want. So what products and services might a business that who's going to buy you need? And what size of business is going to be attractive? If you're too small, they might think that actually they need someone bigger. Equally, your sweet spot might be a sort of small to medium business rather than being a large business. And on the back of that, just think about, are there products and services you need to add to your offering to tweak to be of optimum attractiveness to businesses you're targeting? And I think what can't be forgotten is on a personal level, I was just talking to Jonathan about this, if you're really critical to that business, we were just saying that a tech business needs brains. If they're buying you, then the chances are if you can't extricate yourself from that business, you're going to be tied into that business. I'm tied in for 3 years. They were kind of buying me as well as the team. So if you are critical, you're probably going to be put on some kind of earn-outs. They want to incentivize you to stay, which means the deal will be backloaded in terms of payments. And if you've got a wonderful business where you can sort of extricate yourself before the deal happens, then fantastic, you're going to be free. I'm not. But I think really important is think about what you're going to do next. It's all very great, if you're motivated by the cash in the bank, fantastic. But if you suddenly get rid of this business you actually quite like running, what actually are you going to do next? because you might have exclusion clauses that stop you running a similar business for a period of time. So you really got to think about, actually, is now the right time to do that? Is this the right thing to do? So how do you actually make sure you get the best deal out of selling your business? So key factors to maximise the value. Profitability is the first one. So, just thinking about everything you do to maximise that profit. More often than not, the deal will be a multiple of profit, potentially a multiple of revenue. So different multipliers in different sectors. Digital agencies might be a multiplier of your net profit about 4 to 7. So really focusing on that profit is important. Just thinking about how you maintain your competitive edge. You're going to be attractive if you've got some kind of edge. So thinking about how you can evolve your products and services to sort of stay current. It's quite a tough one, but trying to build in resilience to your business. I used to work for an agency. I started the business partly because the agency I'd worked for had gone bust. 90% of their work was for one client. All it needed was them to, just pull the rug, and the business had gone. So do think about the resilience of the business, because that's going to be a factor in how attractive you are. Think about how much you can scale. Are there potentially changes you can make to your products and services to allow your business to scale? If someone can buy you and they see massive growth potential that they can add. I was hearing the other day about a business that had been paid 10 times the revenue just because this other bigger business just thought, well, I can scale that massively. We're happy to pay quite a lot of cash for this just because you've really got a lot of potential. And I think something that can't be underestimated is the culture as well, number 5. So, if you've got a great culture and you can prove that you can retain really good staff within your team, that's going to be attractive to a new business as well. And a sort of side point, brand equity. If your brand name is really important and it matters, and particularly if it's going to survive after the sale and merger, then do not underestimate sort of building up the equity in that. Brand equity, a good brand name will have a lot of value in its own right. And this guy, Jack Garson, who wrote a book called How to Build a Business and Sell It for Millions, said, if you got all those things, people would bang you down your door to buy the company. So they weren't banging down the door to buy my company, so maybe I didn't have all of them. But an important sort of corollary point here is when you're planning, not just to think about the sort of size of your business and all those facts I've just talked about, but there's a load of quite boring stuff that you should start getting in order. Things like, making sure you've got accurate numbers, you're good at forecasting, making sure you've got contracts in place, making sure your contractors have got good contracts in place. You've got staff manuals, operations manuals. Once they start doing due diligence on your business, they're going to turn it over and ask for all this stuff. Now, admittedly, probably, make sure there's no one in the room who mind me saying this, but we were scrabbling around for some of this stuff, at the last minute. But we had a lot of this in place because I thought about it in advance. So, particularly on the contract side of things, you just got to get those really tight. Even down to small things, like just make sure the office is nice and spick and span so they come and visit you. You just want to give the best impression possible. I think it's worthwhile just getting all that really, really tidy right now. So just talking about the process itself then, just talk about how I went about trying to find a buyer, going through the process, what it involved, and I'm sure there'll be loads of questions that you might want to ask about this later, I'd be happy to answer. So the first thing is advisors. You're going to need some, and they're probably going to cost you quite a lot of money, but they're worth it in the end. So 3 types of advisor that I think you need. Particularly if it's a trade sale, the first one you need is a deal broker. So, if you work in a digital agency, there are sort of marketing digital specialists out there who can help you negotiate, they can help you find potential buyers. They can do the other way around as well. If you want to acquire a company, they can help you find the right people. They're going to be really critical to you on the negotiation front and actually finding buyers. They help me find a buyer. The second one, on a slightly less glamorous note, is accountants and tax advisors. I actually had 2. I had an accountant, I had our accountant, I had a specialist tax advisor on board as well. And then you're going to need a lawyer. I know we all hate paying legal fees, but you are going to need a lawyer to go over a lot of small print. In my experience, there's a lot to still negotiate, even once you think you've agreed the framework of the deal. Small print will bring up loads of issues to negotiate. And you need someone who's specialist, in my case, specialist in digital and mergers and acquisitions. I got one great guy who happens to be very good at both the things. But you need someone who understands your sector. They really get it, and who's been through the mergers and acquisitions. It might be a couple of lawyers in the same firm. But I think, from my experience, you need the specialist who gets your business. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to help you in the negotiation. So I actually had my lawyer helping with the final parts of the negotiation. And he was absolutely brilliant. Doing the deal at the best time, this is really important. You can do all that prep stuff, but if you miss the boat in your market and it's the market's on a downslide, then you're not going to maximise the value that you could have done. So, when is the right time to sell? What I did was I found a deal broker and met with him. I met him about 4.5 years ago, and I sold just over a year ago. So I just kept phoning him up, particularly when I was pissed off, having a bad day. I go, sell this for £5, David, will everyone buy it? So I kept phoning him up and just saying, what's the market like? How are we looking? Sort of 4 years ago was not a particularly good time in the market. So he was saying, there's not a lot of M&A activity at the moment, M&A mergers and acquisitions. So, it's just dead. And then at the time I started to sell, he said, I was really picking up. I think it's a really good time. You've got ad agencies looking for digital agencies. It's perfect. So my first bit of advice there is, find someone good and potentially stay in touch with them. And I think they're really happy to just have a coffee and just chew the cud with you, because they'll get a nice slice at the end if it all comes off. And the second thing is, that's the market. The second thing is, what is the minimum your shareholders are going to want for the business? Because if you're not going to realise that, then what's the point in going through the process? So I think really think about when is the right time for everyone in the business as well. I was a 100% shareholder, so it's just easy. Just ask myself whether it was the right time or I was having a bad day. And I think a really important additional point here is you've got to be prepared to walk away. Your alternative and being prepared to walk away is what's going to make your negotiating position stronger. I had 2 offers before we in previous years before we sold, and one I think I got a bit too sort of emotionally involved, and there was only one offer on the table, and I probably wasn't prepared to walk away then. Almost luckily they pulled out, because I think I was not quite in the right mental state there. I'd almost got a bit carried away with it, and so that was a good experience going into the final process. So I was really trying to create competition, be prepared to walk away, and I nearly did if it wasn't right. And I think that's absolutely critical if you're going to maximise the value. Otherwise, you're just going to have to accept any old offer, frankly. So the actual process then, your number one aim of this process, really, you want to get an offer, but I think ideally you want to get more than one offer at the end of it, if you can, because you want to create competition. It's all very well wanting to walk away, but if you really actually want to do the deal on a personal level, you don't really want to walk away. You have to give the illusion you want to, but you really want to have 2 offers that you can play off against each other in an ideal world. So that's kind of your aim. So the first thing that happens, you prepare a sales prospectus with a broker. That's what they would do. It's kind of like a 1 or 2 pager, just top line of your business, giving away a few details. They'll probably expect the other party to sign an NDA to send it out to them. So in my case, I think they went to about 90 businesses and we had 8 meetings. So they have a big database that their job really is to build a database of potential businesses that might want to buy their clients' businesses. So they send it out to that database. Probably about 20 odd signed the NDA and 8 meetings. And then you just want to make sure your story is really tight. So I learned a lot from the first meeting. By the time I was in meeting 7, it was just like absolutely as tight as possible. So just trying to give the impression that everything's hunky-dory, you're an amazing business, obviously. Everyone would do that. And then you sit back and kind of wait for the offers to roll in. Might be some more questions. People want to find out a bit more information, maybe follow-up meetings. But really, that's the stage. You've kind of done your work then. You just really want to sit back and hopefully you get at least 1 offer. My broker did keep saying, so all you need is 1. All you need is 1. In the end, we got 2 at that stage, so we were able to negotiate. And I think one really important point here that was nearly my downfall the first time it happened, before I got the broker on board, was this deal might never happen. And that's a really important point. And one of the best bits of advice I got from another advisor was just do not take your eye off the ball of your business. Because if it doesn't happen and you're emotionally involved, the first time it ever happened to me, it took me about a week to pick myself up off the floor going, I've got to run this thing again. But when it came round again, I just really made sure I was still running the business. I mean, I invested in a big marketing campaign about 7 months before I sold Cubeworks. And, when I eventually sold it, the team were like, you bloody knew you were going to sell that, didn't you? And we did all those late nights doing it, but we had to, because it might never have happened. We had to do the marketing campaign, we had to relaunch the website, because if it didn't happen and we didn't have it, I think we'd have been in a difficult place. Just want to talk about the negotiation process quickly. I think the broker was in a trade sale is really key in those initial stages. They know what multiples you get for businesses. They just sort of been there and done it. They know the questions to expect. I think they're a bit like the estate agent there. They'll sort of go most of the way. When you're quibbling over a few little points, they're on a percentage margin, like say 3 to 5%. They couldn't really care about the last few bits and pieces. They just want the deal to get over the line. So actually what I did at the last stage was bring in a second advisor, who was my tax advisor, who'd had experience of mergers and acquisitions, to just do the final negotiation. He was very much on my side on like a day rate. The first guy was just, he'd got his margin, he'd sort of, you know, he's just like, oh, this is sort of pretty much done. So I think those two work really well in tandem. Another really important point is just to question your buyer as much as they question you. You know, you want to see their business plan, see their numbers, make sure their culture's okay, just generally sort of turn them over and make sure you're going to be a good fit. Sometimes quite hard to do, but I think do push for that. And then the first thing you'll get is sort of heads of terms. So it just outlines the deal. And I think that's when the lawyer really steps in and starts to earn their money. I think a really important point there is there's still quite a lot of negotiation still, as I said. I was surprised how much negotiation there still is to do once the lawyer gets involved. And things you think are agreed, when you get into the legal nitty-gritty, rear their head. So sort of be prepared for quite an extended process there. Just a few points about merging. So MBA bought Cubeworks, and we've merged and we've become, we're now the MBA Brighton office. We are one entity, so we merged Cubeworks into MBA. So just a few sort of practical tips, really. The first one is just remember when things are getting tough in the negotiation, if you're merging, and certainly if you're still involved in the business, you've got to work with these people. So it's just finding clever ways to sort of remove the angsty conversations from the key people in the business is quite a good tip. And just the communications, just making sure in the business, certainly once the deal is done, there's just a unified message between the two companies. You know, work at board level to make sure consistent communications, you all know what you're saying. I'm on a board of 7 now, so we do work quite hard to make sure we don't talk about them and us, MBA and Cubeworks, London and Brighton. There's just kind of one message, and I think that's really important. And I think, you know, when you're merging two companies and it's fairly similar cultures, but there's always differences. There can always be a bit of them and us. Oh, those people over there are, annoying me or what have you. The best way I've found to just break that down is just have a party. We have a summer party and a Christmas party. Nothing like getting the people together there after a few drinks just to meet each other, get to know each other away from a project with a tight timeline. And I think that, that's to be recommended. And because we have 3 locations, we have London, Brighton, Miami. My final thing is just about, social technology. Brilliant these days. We used to use Yammer. We now use a tool called Slack, which is what all the cool Silicon Valley businesses use. It's brilliant. It's kind of like instant messaging and loads of groups. So we use it for all our internal comms these days. It's absolutely fantastic just for bringing people together and making sure comms is really smooth. It's been a great help. So in summary then, just a sort of few last tips. Number 1, be really clear on your strategy. Number 2, start preparing today. 3, be really clear on what you want, and that might mean you as in all the stakeholders in your business, you personally, but I think just be really clear on what everyone wants out of it. Get your trusted advisors around you, and there's kind of no time like the present just to start making sure you know who they are. And enjoy the ride. It is just sort of fantastic, and if you do the deal at the end, that is a champagne moment, I can tell you. That's really good. But I learned so much from the process, having been through it like 2 or 3 times. I think I'll definitely do it again. So, I'm a bit of a salesman, I like the deal, but it's the buzz of selling your business is better than any client win I've ever had. So I think just go into it enjoying it. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Well, the good news is, hi, I'm Jonathan. The good news is that I agree wholeheartedly with everything Alex has said, and he's taken about half of my presentation, or the need to make it away from me, because those are extremely sensible tips that he's given us for how to enter into, one, a negotiation to sell a business, but also to be very aware of what goes on after the process as well. And Alex has got obviously quite considerable amount of time still to go in terms of his earn-out, and I'll perhaps develop that idea a bit more because I'm now on the other side of that table. So let me give you a bit of background. Some of you may know Epic, a fairly substantial e-learning company, been in Brighton for a couple of decades and a half. I bought it in 2008. It had been a public company prior to that, and then actually was taken over by another public company who basically messed it up. They didn't understand the e-learning industry. They were more publishing focused, and there was a big brain drain. Some senior managers created a company in Brighton called Kineo, which you may be aware of, and it was a pretty difficult 2 or 3 years for the business. I was asked in by the owners, the chairman of the public company that owned it, to troubleshoot it in the end of 2007. And after lifting the bonnet and having a good look at it, I fairly quickly knew that it was a recoverable situation. It had been a seemingly unassailable market leader, and then it had fallen on hard times, but the fundamentals were still there. It still had some great client relationships, and we were very much believers and keen to recover its fortunes. And I was backed by, I'd sold an e-learning company in a trade sale type situation, not dissimilar to the one that Alex described, although I didn't have an earn-out, which was quite fortuitous, but back in 2005. So I knew the industry. I actually had to buy myself out of my restrictive covenants. So one thing that you touched upon, but I think it's worth mentioning, is do be aware, if you do sell your business in whatever form you do, that you'll probably be very valuable to that business, and therefore your buyer is going to want to know that, one, you'll stay around, perhaps, and secondly, that you won't set up an alternative business in competition with them. So think carefully about what restrictions you're prepared to sign up to. I signed my life away in April 2006 to a 3-year restrictive covenant saying I wouldn't work in the e-learning industry again, or for 3 years. And in late 2007, I was paying a quite considerable sum of money to my original purchaser to buy myself out of that restriction. So it's worth being aware of. So I had a backer, and we bought the business in 2008. You might recall June 2008 wasn't the happiest of times in the economy. It was pre-Lehman Brothers going bust in September. But even so, if you'd gone to a bank to try and borrow some money, they'd have laughed you out of the door, which of course they do most of the time these days as well. So we paid cash for the business, and I was fortunate in having a backer with deep pockets. And that made that negotiation very much easier. But once we were in there, I made a fairly grotesque underestimation of how long it would take to fix it. And it comes back to this culture situation. Okay, it wasn't a merger, but I think culture is a massively important point to be very aware of. And if that's wrong, then the business will lose its value. If you merge it with a business that has the wrong culture, that will create a depletion of value as well. So it's very, very important to understand the culture, not only of your own business, but how that will combine with any other business if you were selling it or merging it with them. So, we had a couple of challenging years. Thankfully, by the middle to the end of 2010, Epic was off to the races and doing much better. And 11, 12, and 13, we saw great growth. Unsurprisingly, the industry was also enjoying really good growth. And about sort of mid-2012 onwards, I started to get lots of calls from venture capital, private equity type firms from across the world, mostly Silicon Valley, but also some from the UK and the Far East. And they were all saying, we're really into the digital learning sector, this is what we want to get involved in, and we've seen Epic, and we would like you to be the foundation stone of our buy and build strategy. Now, what they were saying there is that they recognize that our industry is highly fragmented. There are loads and loads of small companies that make up our industry, and only a very small number of larger companies, of which Epic was one. And so they wanted to use us as the foundation stone, and we would go out alongside them and aggregate more and more businesses onto it. And I mulled that over for a long time and thought that was reasonably attractive and quite interesting. But every time I came back around to the whole idea, I was nervous about one thing. I was thinking, what do these people bring? Are they smart? Do they bring smart money, or do they just bring big loads of cash? But are they actually going to give me a lot of difficulties and constraints about how I do things? And we were a pretty proud management team. We were very tight. We'd worked very hard together to recover Epic into a really strong situation. And we were also very proud of the culture and protective over that culture that we developed in the business. We were about circa 130, 140 people workforce. And I was really nervous about inevitably ceding that control to a venture capitalist or a private equity house that would stick, flood people on the board, possibly an executive chairman, and we would be constrained about how we ran the business, and they would be very dictatorial about the way that we went about our acquisition strategy. So we've been mulling this over for a while, and I'm very fortunate in that my partner who assisted me in buying the business is quite a high-profile chairman of an AIM-listed company and well-regarded in the city. He's delivered, which makes a huge difference, by the way. And the summer of last year, just accidentally, his broker went to him and said, look, we've got a cash shell, and we know you've got an e-learning company in Brighton. We're getting a lot of approaches from our big financial institution investors, the big banks and fund managers, who are saying, we're hearing about this e-learning stuff. We like this digital learning sector. How can we invest? In a fairly sort of ignorant way, but they knew the sector was hot. And they said, we can't find anything to invest in. There are no pure play e-learning companies that are quoted on the stock market, for instance. And indeed, amazingly, I didn't realize that, but there aren't. And so they persuaded us to consider creating a public company by reversing into this already public company. Now, it's probably not that relevant, but just very quickly, what we did was what's called a reverse takeover. So this business was called Indeed Online. It was a failed conveyancing business. It was a public company, and the failed core business had been sold to its management team, so it now no longer had a trading company inside it, but it had just under £1 million of cash and a board of directors. And you're only allowed to be a non-trading company, a holding company effectively, on the stock market for 6 months. You then have to delist. So they were up against it on timescale. And we were introduced to them. We liked what they said. They really liked what we were and thought that we were a suitable business to insert into their business, that their existing shareholders would like the story. Obviously, their existing shareholders, as their previous business had failed, were sitting on quite a heavy loss. So the question was, would they stay and see what we could do with their share price? Thankfully, they all did, apart from one. So through the summer and into the autumn last year, we went through a process to do what's called a reverse takeover of a public company. And in November 2013, we put Epic effectively onto the stock market at a value of 15 million. Now, the really important thing about this was that we only did it because we wanted to become controllers of our own destiny in terms of doing a buy and build strategy. In other words, we were going to go out and make acquisitions of the type that Alex has just described he was the subject of, where we buy great businesses led by talented people, and we try and aggregate them all together and make a bigger critical mass from doing so, but try and make it not a bag of bits, but a coalescence of like-minded businesses that can serve each other, cross-sell within each other, etc. And obviously ours is within the learning technologies industry, hence the clue, the learning technologies group. So we were very happy about the strategy that instead of selling ourselves to the devil of a venture capitalist or a private equity house, we were effectively in control of our own destiny. But be under no illusions, we're in control to a limited extent. We are the management team. We have the same say over how we control the business that we had when we were just Epic and private, now that we're public. But we are constrained by being very aware that we are now a public company. We have to declare everything that we do, and we do have a wide array of institutional shareholders who are watching our performance and will make a decision as to whether to buy further shares, keep their shares, or sell their shares, which naturally will have an influence on the share price. So it's certainly not an exit, okay? It was a means to a new beginning, because what it gave us was the access to the capital. So if any of you are considering some form of flotation, IPO, RTO, it doesn't really matter what, but taking your business public, then be very clear, unless you are extremely unusual and extremely lucky, like Alex, you're not getting out at this point. You're effectively signing up for a whole new period of time within your business if they consider that you are one of the highly capable managers that runs your existing business. So why did we do it? Well, we decided we agree with the strategy that we are in a fragmented industry and this is the right time to consolidate that industry. And the access to capital was very attractive. The other thing is that I'm particularly averse to debt. I just think that you never know over the next couple of years which way interest rates are going to go or how high they're going to go. We know which way they're going to go. And I just didn't want to try and and do any form of buy and build and acquisition strategy where I had bank covenants and heavy millstones of debt around my neck. So we decided that having shareholders who would help us finance further buyouts would be a very useful way of doing it. And there was another thing as well. One thing about going public when you're a relatively small company is it gives you a shop window. This isn't the be-all and end-all. You may not be on the market forever, but you get a bigger profile. I was quite astounded, actually. People said to me that you will get a bigger personal profile and the business will be better known. And I went, nah, it's just not going to happen. But genuinely, almost overnight, the profile just raises dramatically. And we found that that's been quite useful because we're already on the radar, not just of fund managers, but also of potential buyers eventually. And I would very much echo Alex's remarks earlier about the fact that you need to groom yourself. You need to think, how should I look for, I suppose you might, a Pearson might be a natural buyer for us. I don't think they will be, but as an example. So we know that they're big into the digital education market in North America, but they're much weaker in the corporate digital learning market where we are growing a strong business. So that might be very attractive to them. What about territories that they're not in at the moment? They could then piggyback on us because they're the territories that we're already there. So you can think about how you groom and shape yourself to make yourself particularly attractive to a specific type of buyer or an individual company in that case. And I think that's a very important thing, irrespective of your size, that you should be doing from the very beginning. And I'd also echo the other comment that Alex made, which is absolutely be rigorous about the paperwork and the quality of the data that you keep from the very beginning. Ignore the whole, I can save a bit of money by filing abbreviated accounts at Companies House because I'm below 6 million turnover. It doesn't matter. A buyer will be super impressed. In fact, I had this situation when I sold my previous company. We'd audited ourselves from 2 million turnover upwards. The due diligence process just went incredibly smoothly because they went, okay, you were serious about this. You've been checked out every year. That passes muster pretty quickly. So it's well worth for the extra few £1,000s of a proper audit having it done. And it also gives you the peace of mind if you're not immensely close to your accounts and your finances that they are being checked very thoroughly, so you'll find any problems with them as you go along. So the other aspect of why we went public is quite relevant the other way around here, because we also knew, okay, we could go to the market and raise money, but what we wanted to do was buy businesses in the same form that Alex was bought, where we said, talented management team, great idea, great company, great brand, we want you with us, but you're of little or no value if you're not with us. We need the people. And we felt that the best way of doing that, rather than like in your situation, which is a private company buyout, so I take it MBA are private, aren't they? So you've got covenants from them whereby they will pay you a certain amount of money based on your performance, but you've got to rely on them having the cash to do that. So where we are is that we're saying, come and join us on our journey. So we're issuing new LTG stock to you. Some of that you can take as cash on the way when you sell your business, but the other aspects of it you'll take as shares, and you will have a like-minded and aligned ambition with us to grow the value of the company progressively so that your shares become more valuable. And in the particular case of a games company we bought called Preloaded, we did do an earn-out situation, so they are very focused also on growing the business over the next couple of years to ensure that they maximise the number of shares that we will give them. On earn-outs, by the way, I'd just say I'm in great favour of making an earn-out revenue-based, not profit-based. The problem with a profit-based earn-out is that we can make a difference, a beneficial difference to most businesses because we can strip costs out that business would have otherwise because we're a bigger mothership. And we can also help with many other things that will positively affect the profitability of that business. And what I think I would find most frustrating is being told, no, I'm on an earn-out based on my profits, so hands off for 2 years, you can't do anything to us, we're going to stand separately. And it also means you can't properly integrate. Whereas if you say, we're going to help you grow your top line, your revenue as much as we can, we're going to cross-sell for you, we're going to work alongside you, don't worry about the profit because we believe that we can control the profit really well, but we will effectively pay you a little bit like a super sales commission. We'll pay you a value of every pound of additional revenue for every pound of additional revenue that you generate. And we're going to help you do that. And I've found that has been the most incentivizing and positive way of doing an earn-out, and also very honest. It's very finite and objective. It doesn't cause any problems later on where there's an argument about who made the profit a bit more depressed and so on. So that was the reason we went public. It's not all plain sailing. I suppose the couple of things that one has to be aware of is there is naturally an increased requirement for corporate governance and reporting. And you really do find yourself being very aware of the fact that you make decisions with the elephant in the room. Anything of significance to the business, you have to be thinking about, is that something that's announceable? Do we have to tell the market? When I'm in the pub with my friends, I can't say, oh, it's going really well, we won a new contract this week that's going to make a big difference. I have to be really careful about what I think I can say and can't say, because it might be price-sensitive information. And these days, the one change to culture that I found really upsetting was that when we were recovering Epic, one of the things that we really did was we created this fantastic collegiate atmosphere where we brought all 150 odd people along with us and just said, look, we've been in a pretty crap time. Help us to build this business back up. We put everyone on a bonus, but not just a benign sort of profit-related bonus. We really thought about how we could structure bonus schemes so that they felt very personal to that person, and each person could make a difference. And I made it an absolute goal that every person in my business could earn a bonus. So they all had the opportunity, and I'm immensely proud that in 11, 12, and 13, every person qualified. It wasn't a fudge. They actually qualified, and I genuinely believe that was because we motivated them and incentivized them appropriately. But how did we do that? We used to have quarterly meetings, have a drink, and I would explain to them where the company's results were, where were the dark spots, where were the great spots, how did we repair what was going wrong, and we all worked together, and I could share the whole information. There was nothing that was off the table, and now I cannot do that, which I find really, really, it's a great shame, actually. I would much prefer to be able to be very open, but I'm now not allowed to share the full corporate finance data with everybody. In fact, even with my senior managers, they now only see the page of their budget and accounts that relates to their business. The other thing is just, Alex talked about advisors. The city is a fickle place. I've now got 10 months experience of it. I've enjoyed most aspects of it, but it's not for the faint-hearted. And I'm more than fully aware that you could, they can turn against you just as quickly as they were all for you. And they are a bit lemming-like. Once one fund manager decides that your stock is not for them, then you find if they hit the exit button, quite a few others follow. So, we're in a good place at the moment, but I never go to bed at night thinking that's always been the case. So, that's definitely a pitfall. The other thing is that you do need to recognize that if you're a relatively small business, and I feel we were at first. I mean, we're only an 8 million turnover, 1.5 million profit business when we went to the market last year. And our story was very much, we're going to grow really quickly. We'll be a 50 million revenue company within 3 years. And we're now, through acquisition and organic growth, about 20 million revenue annualized. And you've got to be seen to be a bit different to make your mark on fund managers. And just be aware that you need good advisors that open the right doors to the right fund managers that want to buy your stock. And that's a whole additional process that actually takes quite a bit of time. And it's one that shouldn't be taken lightly. I suppose most importantly, don't ever think of going public. And it's this high-profile thing. It's very exciting. It's that champagne moment, all the rest of it. Don't think it's an exit. It really isn't. We chose deliberately not to sell any stock actually at the time of our reverse because we knew we were going to issue lots of stock, and that therefore would cause dilution as we issued more shares. And we wanted to retain the biggest proportion of our stock that we could in a few years' time when we eventually do think that we will exit. So we didn't sell it at first. We then sold into some extreme investor demand a bit later because investors were clamoring for the stock, and we were told that we needed to get some stock into them. But don't think of an IPO as an exit, because it really isn't. You are signing up for a whole new stage of your running your business. But obviously, the multiplier effect could be really quite incredible, and you might eventually get a very exciting and very high value exit. But that's all in how it performs over those coming years. I think that's about all I wanted to say to you at this stage. But I hope it's a good contrast to Alex's experience. But there's a huge amount of commonality, and I think we're very happy to take some questions now, aren't we? Thank you.